Hey guys, and welcome back to another YouTube video. In this video, I'll be teaching you more of the beginner basic topic of Python, that is classes and objects. So this is not like exactly the really like this topic is something that is the kind of the basic and the fundamental topic of any programming language and not just Python. So let me just write classes and objects. So the reason why I'm making this video is because classes and objects are fundamental to like almost any programming language. There are a few languages that don't have classes and objects. For example, C and even Golang. Golang uses structs, which are kind of like classes, but whatever. So classes and objects are used extensively throughout any code base. I personally use them in almost every single thing that I create. They really just help you maintain the code, and you just increase the quality of your code by a lot. Another reason that I'm making this video is for the people who can't really wrap their heads around the concept of classes. For example, if they're studying this at school and they can't really wrap their heads around what exactly classes and objects mean. You can't understand what they are trying to say when they say classes in the textbook. So that's why also this will be like a basic video for you to watch. I won't get into polymorphism, data abstraction, and encapsulation because they are a bit more advanced. But I'll just be doing like basic classes and objects. So the prerequisites for this video are not a lot. You just need to be knowing super basic Python functions, print statements, variables, and yeah, only this much. So let's actually get started and first understand what exactly do you mean by a class, because I'm kind of thinking that you don't know anything about classes and objects and you want to learn everything, like a good amount. So what exactly is a class? So to actually make you understand what a class is, what I will do is I will kind of develop on an understanding and then come to the idea. So in any programming language we can represent a piece of text as a string. So for example, if I have a piece of text called coding made easy, you will have to excuse my handwriting. If I have this piece of text called coding made easy, we obviously know that the data type for this is a string. And if I have some number like let's just say 13, this number is a integer. And if I have some arbitrary number like 175.3, we all also know that this number is a floating point. We know that. So we know, and we also know that these things are just inbuilt data types in Python. And what these data types do is they kind of define these things. So they kind of are they define the things that we want to declare. Now there is a problem. Python has only helped us to define like strings like this, integers like this, and floating points like these. But Python really does not help us to define real world objects like books or phones or anything like that. So now let me just change my color real quick. In color. Okay. Let me just go more colors. Go and alright, there we go. So now, how do we actually define real world data? So how will you actually define some real world data? And let's actually leave the concept of real world data also. Let's just say you are creating a game where there's this player. So let's just say there's this player, and there are a bunch of things that this player can do. So the player can, let's just say he can walk, he can fight the enemies, so he can fight, and let's just say he can also eat food. So he can also eat food. Now here's the thing, there isn't anything that like there isn't any data type or anything in Python that can like define the player of a game, right? There isn't like any defined thing that a player should walk or a player should fight or a player should eat food or x number of things like dot dot dot, like whatever the player can do. but we want the player to do something like that. We want the player to walk, we want the player to fight, or we want the player to eat food. So what we do is we create a class. Of the player, and what we do is we pass the class a few parameters, that the player can walk, the player can fight, and the player can eat food. So we are kind of like recreating. We are kind of no, I'm not sorry, not recreating. We are kind of like simulating that player using code. So to give you a better example, let's just say, let's just take a book. So if we have a class of a book, what should the book have? Well, I think some of the I'm not really going to be going into the deep things that a book should have. I'm just going to be taking some superficial things. So let me just change my color to red. It should obviously have a title. It should have an author. Then it should also have a length, a number of pages, and it should have a rating. These are like, there are a ton of things that books also have, but I'm just taking the bare basics. So these are like the bare basics that a book should have. So what we can do is we can kind of create a class of a book. So we can go here, create a class book, and we can then assign that class book some properties. Now I will show you how to do that later on using Python code, but I just wanted to kind of give you the intuition right now. Alright, so that's basically what you mean when you say classes and objects. You're kind of defining these real world concepts in Python which aren't already defined. Now you might ask me, yeah, I kind of get the idea, but like, you can kind of also do it using basic Python code, right? You don't necessarily need to create these player classes. You don't need to write this a little bit, alien looking code. You can just use the basic Python practices. You surely can, but the problem is using classes, which you will see right now when I will actually start programming. The amount of code that we will need to write will be reduced by a lot. So I will actually also leave, like, if you actually check out my Frogger video, the video where I created the Frogger game in Pygame, you will see that I actually used classes and objects in that game. So watch that video after you watch this so you can actually understand. You will see that the amount of code, like, try making that game without using classes and objects, and then try making that game using classes and objects, and you will actually see that you would have to write so much of extra code if you wouldn't have used classes and objects. So whatever, so that's basically how classes are. Now there are a few things in classes, such as there is inheritance, but I won't be covering that again. As I told you, I won't be covering inheritance. Then there is also something called encapsulation, I'm sorry, encapsulation. I know I misspelled it incorrectly, but it's okay. Then there is also polymorphism. That's also a very important topic. Polymorphism. And yeah, so now let's actually dive into the nitty gritty code, which is something that I'm pretty sure all of you would be wanting. So first of all, let me just open up my terminal and navigate to my Python directory and ls. Just a second. Python code cd cler. Let me just open this up in VS Code. Close my terminal. Alright, so main.py. Alright, so first of all, how do we declare a class? How do we make a class? So we are gonna be creating the class of a football player, a soccer player. So what I will do is type out class. We just type out this thing called class, and then we just say, oops, okay, what happened? I don't want this. Alright, class soccer. Now we usually start with a capital letter in a class. You won't get an error if you don't, but it's a really good practice. So we just type out class soccer player, then put a colon, then you just say define underscore underscore init underscore underscore, then we just pass in this thing called self, put a colon, and now I'm just gonna pass it right now. But basically this is just initializing the class, so we use a dunder method. Now that's a whole new video, but this is called a dunder method. If you are putting double underscores and you are putting anything out like between these two double underscores, then we call it a dunder method. For example, if you know some Python, you will know that there is also this dunder method called underscore underscore ltr underscore underscore. I won't get into all of that, but alright. So now what you do is over here where you have written self, you need to put in the things that you're gonna be thinking that a soccer player should have. So in this case, what exactly should a soccer player have? He should have a name, obviously. He should have a team he's playing for. He should have a position on the field. Position. And I really can't think. I'm not much into soccer, so I really don't know a lot. I think I'm just gonna keep it this much. We will see if you want to add anything. So then all we do is we test about self.name equals name. Now why exactly are we writing this? Why exactly aren't we writing the name of any soccer player like Lionel Messi or Cristiano Ronaldo or whatever it is? Why aren't we writing the actual name of the soccer player? Why are we writing self.name equals name? Why aren't we writing self.name equals the name of the football player? The reason being because there isn't just a single football player in the world. There are hundreds and thousands of like a lot of football players in the world, and you can't actually guess what football player anyone would want. For example, if you are creating like a library, like libraries have thousands of books, sometimes millions of them, and you can't just write the name of one book over here, obviously, because otherwise there will be no point of creating a class, because you would be creating the millions of classes. So what you would do instead of doing this, what you would actually do is you just define name, and later on we will create an object of this class. So what an object is an instance of the class. So a class is a blueprint. It can't do anything on its own. But an object is something that kind of implements it. So let me actually give an example. For example, if you know the cerebrum and the cerebellum, you actually get the thought in the cerebrum, but the cerebrum can't actually execute the thought. You need the cerebellum, you need the muscles and the bones of the body which actually help you to execute the thought. And that's kind of what's happening in a class. Like the class is kind of like the cerebrum in this case. It can't actually uh, execute the code. It can't actually do a ton of things just by itself. But as soon as you create an instance of the class, it can do a whole lot of things. So you can give a self.name equals name, self dot team equals team, and self dot position equals position. So now we have created a really simple and a basic class of a soccer player. So now what we can do, just a second, let me just open up my OBS studio, see if my recording is going well. Alright, so now that we have created this super basic class, we can actually start creating an object which is the instance of the class. So first of all, what I will do is make a comment creating, just a second guys, I will be back in a second. Alright, sorry for that. So now that I will just create a comment creating the creating the classes, and now what I will make another comment is creating the objects. So let me actually show you something. Well, if you sometimes want to create like a input of a floating point, what we usually do is we just type out x is equals to float, I put an input, and then we just say like enter number. So we are kind of defining what we want before we actually give it the thing input. So over here, well, guess what, we will say soccer player. So what I will say is something like player underscore 1 is equal to soccer player. So we pass in soccer player, not int or not float, not string. And now we will pass in all these parameters that a soccer player should have, that we have literally just defined up top over here. So the name, I'm just gonna be going Ronaldo, team, well, I'm just gonna be putting in Juventus. I know I really don't know a lot. I know it's like the FIFA thing. It's Juventus. So and in the position, I don't know. I'm just gonna go midfield. I know I'm pretty sure that's not the position. I think it's right wing or something. I don't know. So now we have created an object or player one, which is a soccer player, and the name of the player one is Ronaldo, the team is Juventus, and the position is midfield. So now, currently, obviously, if I run the program, we are not going to see any output because, well, we already know that if you just define a variable, you need to actually print the variable out. Now, printing out the variable is going to be a bit different. Currently, if I go and uh, print out player one, you will see what happens. So if I just print out, so we get main soccer player object add, we get the memory address of the soccer player, which we obviously don't want. We want to get the data inside the soccer player. We want to get the name or the team or the position. So what we will do, we say print player one dot, we pass in which parameter of the player one, we want to print out. So we say name. So now if I just run this program, you will see that it should print out Ronaldo. So as you can see, it prints out Ronaldo. I can now just do the same thing for print player one dot team, and that should print out Juventus. So if I just run that again, it says Ronaldo and Juventus. And I can do the same thing for print player one dot position, and now it should print out Ronaldo, Juventus, and midfield if everything is correct, which it obviously is right now. So now it prints these three things out. But currently a class is there, but it kind of is not of any use. Like, I know it can print stuff out and it's good, but I don't think our class is doing a lot of work right now. It's basically just storing some values, which yeah, it is cool. It's kind of saving us some work, but it's still not something that I'd be willing to use in any huge code base. I still I have my be a bit dicey. So now let me actually show the final kind of selling factor of classes. Another really cool thing that people absolutely love, which kind of makes classes so good. So let me just increase my brightness real quick. Alright. So let me just go over here and make a comment, print statements. So now what I will do is I will create a method for this class. So what exactly do you mean by a method for a class? Well, let me explain it to you. Well, currently we have a soccer player. We know that the soccer player should have a name. As you can see over here, we have cell.name. The soccer player should have a team, and the soccer player should have a position. Well, here's the thing. Although the soccer player is currently holding these three things, a soccer player does a lot more than just having a name, having a team, and having a position. The soccer player actually plays football, soccer. So how can you actually make the soccer player do that? How can you actually make a function that is only dedicated to this class, not to anything else, that will make this soccer player actually do stuff that is like function? How you will actually do that? Well, the way we do it is you will go over here to the define indentation. We will unindent this part. So let me just show you. You go over here and it says define, and I'm just gonna create a method called score underscore goal. And over here, what you just pass in is this self parameter, and you can pass in now. Besides self, you can pass in all the parameters that you want, but the self is a default parameter. You need to pass self. After self, you can pass in all of the parameters that you want, but you can't skip self. Otherwise, it will just show you an error. For example, if I just get rid of it now, as you can see, it underlines this entire thing. So yeah. So now what I will do is inside I'm just gonna say print goal and a few of these exclamation signs. So now, currently, if I will still run the program, I will still get Ronaldo, Juventus, and midfield. Let me just clear the screen and show you. We still get Ronaldo, Juventus, and midfield. We don't get a goal printed out to the screen. And again, with some basic Python knowledge, you must be knowing you need to actually create a function call to actually get the data from the function. You cannot get the data from any function without actually calling the function. Well, in this case, you might be saying, well, I already created the object for the class, right? So why do we need to call the function? We are basically calling the function, right? No, we need to actually call the function on this object to actually get this data. So the way we basically do it is actually very simple. All we do is just type out player one dot, and we simply will just put in the score goal function over here. So score underscore goal, and we will just put in our this thing. So we have this function on our player one. So now if I simply click on the run button, we get Ronaldo, Juventus, midfield, and then we get goal, which we had obviously defined over here. So yeah, that's pretty much, some of the basics of classes and objects. They go a long way, but these are some of the basics that you should know. Rest of the things you can learn when you will need them. Like, you won't be using them as much as you might be using these things. These are kind of like the basic stuff that you need to know. Now, other thing that I want to show you is these classes and objects can actually really help you with code maintenance. So currently, I want you to imagine a huge program that you are writing. Like, let's just say you are writing the code for like a FANG industry. Like, let's just say you are writing code for Google, and you are pretty much just reworking the entire networking code for Gmail. So obviously, it's going to be thousands of lines of code that you are going to be dealing with. And the thing is, you could either put all of those thousands of lines of code in one file, which would be very messy, or you could actually spread it over a lot of files, so that people, if you can open up the folder, you will actually understand what is going on, and you are not just going to be in this one huge file with having absolutely no idea. The code will not be something that will be able to be maintained. So what we can actually do is, currently we don't need to do this, but I'm just teaching you so that when you're actually going to be dealing with some larger programs, you actually understand what you need to do. So what I will do now is I will take this entire creating the class thing, and I'll just control exit, and I will take this over here. Obviously currently it will show us an error since we don't have the class, but now what I will do is I go over here, create a new file called soccer underscore player. You can name it else something else also .py. I am naming it soccerplayer.py only. And as soon as I over here, what I will do is I will simply paste in the soccer player class. Now what I will do is I'll save the file first, obviously. Go over to my main.py file, and we can import that file and that specific class from the file. So let me show you. So what we can do is we can just say from soccer underscore player import. We can import this specific class soccer player, as you can see. And as you can see, the underline will disappear. And again, if I just run this program, let me just clear the terminal screen so you can see it a bit more nicely. We get Ronaldo, Juventus, midfield, and then goal, which is exactly what we wanted. And that's pretty much it. We have created kind of like a Python package. So what you can do is you can spread out various classes in various files, which can really help you with code maintenance. So you have kind of stripped down some of the code from one file and threw it into another file. So as you can see now, both the files are like 9 lines of code, and this one is 12 lines of code. So now imagine this to be 900 and this to be 1200. If you just put it together, that's 2100 lines of code in one single file. It will be an absolute mess. But if you actually spread it together in 10 files, that will just be like a little bit like 120 lines of code per file. So it will be something that you will actually be able to maintain, and if you actually want to go ahead and make some changes in the future, you will actually be able to make them. Which in this case, if you would just throw it together in one file, it will be absolutely impossible and a huge nightmare for you. So that's pretty much it. I didn't cover a lot, and this was more of a beginner's tutorial, but I really wanted you guys to understand a really important topic in Python, and not just Python, any programming language except C and Golang, and a few of them like that. But whatever. So that's it for today, guys. I hope that you enjoyed this video. Comment down below if I should make a few videos on some more beginner friendly topics like this. I know, if you want another Python for beginner series, I know that my previous one wasn't the best, so I will consider making a new one if you want. Otherwise, you can leave a comment down below which videos that you would like to see. Would you like to see some AI stuff like that? I'm actually currently working on my own personal project. It's really really cool. It's actually a game, pretty chill one, but it's actually quite long. It's gonna have like levels and everything. I'll show you once it's done, but it will take a little bit of time. And, who knows if I will actually be able to code it out also. But it's going pretty nicely so far, so I'm having a few good expectations that will turn out nice. So whatever. So that's it for today, guys. I hope that you enjoyed the video. If you did, like and subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in another YouTube video.